It's time for NA Sidelines presented by Microsoft. My guest this week, Sarina Morales. She was the Rams team reporter. She now works with Bally Sports. Sarina, always good to have you on. And how about these Rams? I mean, how would you gauge the excitement level in Los Angeles from now compared to some of the years where Jared Goff was there?
It gives you like the when they went to the Super Bowl vibes a little bit. There's like this rejuvenation of hope. Obviously, the last season with Jared Goff, just last season, that game where they lost to the Jets was such a all the air was sort of like let out of the room, like, oh gosh, it's done. They're not going anywhere with this quarterback. And so when you see Matthew Stafford and what he's done and just the crazy connections he's made with Cooper Kupp so far, Cooper Kupp is like 56 receptions and 9 touchdowns, like insane. It's leading the league in a ton of categories. And it's mostly because during the preseason, when I was still with the Rams and covering them, I saw this magic between these two like masterminds on offense. And, Sean McVay, who's also his own savant when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. I mean, they're all just like foaming from the mouth, like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. So I think it's been cool to see like come to fruition. And LA, I mean, they're packed. SoFi Stadium is packed every freaking Sunday when they're at home.
I remember going out there and watching the Rams a few years ago, and it was empty. They were still in that old Olympic stadium. And so
yep.
they've definitely got their fans up. All right, let's talk about Matthew Stafford because he just passed 300 career touchdowns and three touchdowns in Sunday's game against the Lions. He's put up some of the best numbers of his career right now against the Rams. So I know the expectations were pretty high for him, but what's been the biggest surprise about him so far this season?
Well, look, I think one, he is way more protected than he ever has been. You have like Andrew Whitworth, Brian Allen, their center. There were a lot of questions actually after the Rams lost center Austin Blythe, who went to the Chiefs. Who's going to fill that spot? Austin Corbett, is he going to move in from guard to center? Brian Allen had been with the team for a long time. They didn't really fill, if you notice, like during the draft, the Rams didn't fill a lot of spots on offensive line. And a lot of reporters were like, hey, what happened? I thought you were going to try and protect Matthew Stafford. And I even joke with Matthew Stafford's wife at one point. She's like, oh, I hope they get a couple offensive linemen. But lo and behold, the team felt good about who they had. Brian Allen, just be a former wrestler. We love those like low, steady sort of guys that are built to just block who's ever coming at their quarterback. And Brian Allen's done a great job doing that. They still have Austin Corbett, Andrew Whitworth, such a veteran in the league, could probably play as old as when Tom Brady decides to retire. The two of them are neck and neck. And I think that cohesiveness at offensive line has been very helpful. That I watched film with Sean McVay and a few beat writers this offseason. McVay wanted to show all of the writers like, hey, this is why I get so excited about Matthew Stafford. His calmness in the pocket, his ability to move when he is about to get sacked is beyond impressive to the human eye. If you watch things in slow motion and he goes through all of his reads and then he goes back and makes the best decision, which is why you've seen more Tyler Higbee receptions this season. It's why you're seeing like that balance of Van Jefferson, who's popped this season. Robert Woods is certainly making a splash when he can. And you're seeing other targets besides Cooper Kupp. Now, obviously he's Matthew Stafford's favorite target, but I think you're getting a lot of different mixes. It depends on the play. But yeah, I think his ability to be just calm under center, his ability to be protected by that offensive line, and his ability to make really smart throws and protect the football, something I think we saw Jared Goff not do so well in seasons prior.
All right, 19 touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. Stafford's obviously having a great season, but being there with Sean McVay, how much has McVay really changed that offense to suit Stafford? What are the biggest differences that you've seen from last year to this year?
Yeah, I mean, just basically Sean McVay opened up the playbook and was like, oh, let's go to page 52. We haven't gone to that page in a while. I think, Sean McVay loves disguising his offenses. Remember, like back when they ran for the Super Bowl was in 2018. He ran that 11 personnel 90% of the time. It was Brandon Cooks, who you guys are familiar with, and Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. And they ran all of those wide receivers, but one was blocking and one was running its route and the other one was running as a running back. And he sort of disguised all those plays. Todd Gurley was on the team at the time. and it was successful. And then they got figured out. So the fact that he is able to, I mean, look, he wasn't able to make these risky plays and take chances on Jared Goff because Jared Goff was still, building up himself. I mean, look, Jared Goff is not a mobile quarterback. We've seen him. I think he actually played really well against his former team just last week in week 7 when the Lions came to SoFi Stadium and played the Rams. But he's able to take chances. He's able to really go deep into that playbook. And that's where you're seeing a bunch of different routes being played. I mean, obviously, there's still the standard, Rams plays on offense. But when it comes to Matthew Stafford, you'll see this man will really take time to make the right decision and make the right throw downfield. A lot of their throws are a lot deeper, I think, than years prior with Jared Goff.
All right. You mentioned Cooper Kupp, and he's the first wide receiver in the Super Bowl era to have over 800 yards receiving and 9 touchdowns through the first 7 games. So obviously he's quite a favorite target of Matthew Stafford, but other teams know that he's going to get the ball, and yet he still finds a way to get open. I mean, what does he do so well, and how has he really evolved this year with Stafford's addition?
He's a book nerd. He stays in that, like the meeting rooms. He is like the Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, like the 3 of them, they all hung out. If they were back in high school, they would be standing by their lockers and being like, oh man, did you talk about math class? Like, how exciting to learn new things in math class. Like, that's who he is, Cooper Kupp. And then, obviously he is supported in that wide receiver room because you usually don't, we all know this, we cover football. Wide receivers, they want that ball, right? Wait, luckily, Cooper Kupp is in a room with guys like Robert Woods and Van Jefferson and Deshaun Jackson, who are, look, and Deshaun Jackson definitely in the past would be like, I want that ball, but he's in a veteran stage of his life. And he's like, look, I'm trying to help out a team. I'm trying to get a ring. So there's a different sort of like wide receiver core that it's perfect for a guy like Cooper Kupp, who's very selfless. I mean, that man, you'll see him, if he's not getting the ball, he's making blocks. And so I'm really excited to see this wide receiver group that is so selfless be so successful. And I think like Sean McVay has even said it in the past this season, just, I got to make sure that I get Robert Woods in the mix. I got to make sure Van Jefferson had the first touchdown for the Rams this season. All our eyes were on Cooper Kupp during the preseason and the magic we saw during training camp. And who was the first receiver to get a touchdown? It was Van Jefferson. Sean McVay knows this stuff. So even though, yes, all eyes are on Cooper Kupp, I would watch out for other receivers like the Van Jeffersons, Tyler Higbee, who's great with his hands, and Robert Woods.
All right, this Rams offense loves to pass the ball, obviously, but the injuries to the running backs have been interesting. Obviously, they lost Cam Akers before the start of the season, and it seems like ever since the departure of Todd Gurley, they haven't really had a 3-down back. They've got Sony Michel on the roster, but do you think that Darryl Henderson is that guy for the Rams as far as the run game is concerned, or is it going to be running back by committee now here for the rest of the year?
We would like to see Darryl Henderson, I think, take that more like leadership role. He's been dinged up too. I mean, he had a few, I believe they were broken ribs or he had rib injury earlier this season. I sent him a text. I was like, hey, how are those ribs doing? And he's like, I'll be fine. Don't worry about it. So look, the toughness is there. His ability to like jump in, even when he's dinged up, is there. And that's what you want to see. Obviously, Sony Michel coming from the Patriots early on in the season, they grabbed him, obviously, when Cam Akers went down. Sean McVay loves to tease the press, and he's like, we may see Cam Akers come back this season if they go to the playoffs and make that run. But I think Darryl Henderson has great hands as a running back. He's been successful so far. It really came down to Cam Akers, who really proved himself last season. He was the every down back. And now that Cam Akers is out, I think it's Darryl Henderson or bust. Like, go get him, Tiger. And I think now that he knows, okay, I've got the time to really flourish, because remember, Darryl Henderson was under Todd Gurley, was under Malcolm Brown for those first few seasons. And so now he's like, oh man, I'm ready to go. And it's not like I've got to keep proving myself. Now it's like, I just have to play my game and go and stay healthy. And that's been the main concern for Darryl Henderson, is that he keeps getting these little dinged up, injuries here and there. So he's got to stay healthy. Otherwise, yeah, Sony Michel, you're the next man up. And by the way, let's not sleep on Jake Funk. I would love to see Adam Maryland, one of the later draft picks for the Rams. I'm waiting to for SoFi Stadium to play. We've got the funk when Jake Funk scores a touchdown. But Jake Funk, I think he's just got like such a good, like he's got a chip on his shoulder. He's gone through his own injuries, but he's another one that maybe we see step up if we don't see Darryl Henderson continuing to do what he's doing on offense.
All right, let's talk about that Rams defense because they rank near the top of the league in sacks and in interceptions, 20 sacks, 10 interceptions. But last week against the Rams, they gave up 415 net yards to the Lions. So is there an Achilles heel to this Rams defense, or was that just a one-time game for them?
Look, I give credit to the Lions who Dan Campbell, his name is now Man Campbell in my eyes, because holy cow, this coach threw the kitchen sink, the fridge, the pans, everything at this game to try and get a win against the Lions. Those special teams plays really, I think, got the Rams off guard a little bit. So yes, I think they need to be able to stop the run better. When needed, that's where you see the Aaron Donald step up. And I think he put a lot of pressure on Jared Goff against the Lions just last week. Jalen Ramsey, never questioned the kid, got an interception and took that. That was a close game against the Rams and Lions. I think it gives a lot of teams who only have a win or so some hope, like, hey, we can beat this team. But I also think there was a lot of familiarity with that team in general. I mean, we look at the Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford, trade there, but the Detroit Lions also have Nickel Roby-Coleman, a cornerback who used to play for the Rams. Kadarrell Hodge, who's a wide receiver, used to play for the Rams. Michael Brockers, defensive lineman, used to play for the Rams. Their Rams former cornerbacks coach, is now the DB's coach for the Lions, and their GM, Brad Holmes, used to be the director of scouting for the Rams. So I just think there's a whole lot of we know how the Rams are going to play. They're going to do a couple moves that we're familiar with and we'll be prepared for. So I think it was more that, it was interesting. Very recently, they traded Kenny Young, linebacker, over to the Broncos, who needed some depth at linebacker. He joins former Ram Michael Kaiser over there with the Broncos. But there is this talk of when Sean McVay was asked about that trade earlier this week, there's some financial stake in that, but also they have a rookie linebacker, Ernest Jones, out of South Carolina, who's really expected to step up. I thought he played really well this preseason, and during training camp, he splashed. So look, if there's going to be this Achilles heel, if you will, maybe, they're looking to see who can break who, but I really don't see any weak spots when it comes to the Rams defense. I think it was more of the outlier that there was so much familiarity with the Lions and Rams from last weekend.
Well, they'll face Jalen Ramsey as well. And the last time they faced Jalen Ramsey, he was still with the Jaguars, and it might've been his last game as a Jaguar. That's when the trade talk started. So they'll face him again. They've got a lot of familiarity there. Sarina, always a pleasure catching up with you. Have a great game day, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks for watching, and go Texans. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell for new content.